In Rambo 2, Stallone, he not only acts, if you want to call it that, acts in these roles, he also writes the scripts. And he turns around in that movie and he says to his old Green Beret commander, he says, "Are we going to fight to win it this time?" And he certainly does win it. He goes into Vietnam and he kills a battalion of Russians. He kills the whole Vietnamese army. They throw napalm at him. He's captured by them, he's tortured, and he liberates prisoners of war. He's aided by the fact that his adversaries all seem to be legally blind. They cannot shoot straight. Hundreds of rounds are shot at him, and they just always miss, never fluff his hair. But while the movie is outrageous and it's ridiculous, again, don't lose sight of the fact that it's once more turning history on its head. I mean, in reality, the Vietnamese have exchanged prisoners of war with the United States after signing the Paris Peace Agreement, which ended the war. And that whole POW MIA issue is really an outrageous, pandering exploitation of the unrealistic hopes of those families, conducted by the Pentagon and the U.S. government and played upon by people like Ronald Reagan. You know, there were 18,000 Americans missing in action from World War II. Where do you suppose they are? Are they being held captive in Toyota factories or in beer cellars in Wiesbaden someplace or something? No, tragically, unfortunately, sadly, they're dead, and it's acknowledged that they're dead. But the 2,000 some missing from Vietnam have never been acknowledged realistically for what they are, which is that they're dead. Instead, that issue is exploited. It's not only exploited, but whole movies are made out of it. Not just Rambo 2, but Missing in Action 1, Missing in Action 2, Missing in Action 3.
I am from beyond. Listen, and all you desire will be yours. Welcome to Spider-Dan and the Secret Balls. Prepare for Prattle.
Spider Knight?
Alas, friend Spider-Man, by what sorcery doth small ceiling torch shine forth?
It's called a light bulb.
Welcome to Prattle World. I am your host, the ever-amazing, ever-spectacular Spider-Dan, and in this podcast I spotlight entertainment's best-kept secrets that a mainstream audience may find boring. And welcome to Spider Nights of the Round Table, where we attempt to answer a question without an obvious answer in a round table format. And today we're getting very serious. We're getting into the weeds of the politics, of all of that good stuff. And we're going to be talking about the Vietnam War, Reagan, Rambo, Chuck Norris, and everything in between. A lot of bandanas, a lot of M60 machine guns. We are here to talk about Reaganite Rambo did Uncommon Valor, Missing in Action, and First Blood Part 2 fuel the 1980s POW conspiracy and influence actual US policy. Wow, what a question to ask. And who has asked it but Scott Weatherly himself, the man, the myth, the legend, that has done all this research, more research than even I could fit in, given the time I had. He's done so much more. I've read a little chapter of his upcoming book all about this, about the Bring Our Boys Home trilogy, I think you called it. But yeah, welcome back. It's been a while since we talked revenge. I think we did British revenge films last, didn't we? So
we did, yeah.
You always bring these very interesting topics that I'm like, oh, this is something very different.
I like to tickle your fancy, Dan. That's the point.
Consider my fancy tickled. So yeah, you know, I love getting into the, like we talked very recently, which I'll leave in the show notes, about the politics and the 80s-ness of the foreign policy of Reaganism. And yeah, because I mean that was it was a Reagan idea, wasn't it, to get rid of the nuclear weapons, and Superman was like, yeah, that's a pretty good idea, Mr. Reagan. Forget all the foreign policy. Well, off we go. But yeah, so what made you pick this topic in particular? Because I've not really done one of these kind of roundtable discussions for a while, so I thought I'd bring it back, given that you wanted to, because we talked about maybe comparing the films because they're all quite similar in a way, but then you were like, no, let's just get into a deep discussion.
Let's see where it goes. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I should be wearing a tweed jacket with leather elbow patches at the moment. But
take us to school.
Yeah. Oh, no, basically it came about because I am working on this book at the moment that is doesn't have a title, but it's basically sort of like kind of almost like the history of action. It started as an idea that I put to Tony, good friend, Tony Farina. It was basically like we'd done the Sequat books, and I was like, that's about comics.
You did Dread, and you did
Moon Knight, and I've contributed to one about pulp heroes recently and stuff. So I was like, I want to do something about action films. So I had all these ideas for essays about action films, and it was going to be, looking at like women in action films, and the morality of action films, and then this and that, and all these different bits and pieces. And as I started doing it and putting the research together, I was like, well, I don't know where the starting point is. Like, where do action films start? Like, there is no definitive start, but I'd sort of take a stab. So I made the sort of stab of Bond, James Bond, and the Sergio Leone, Clint Eastwood westerns. I was like, they sort of become a turning point. They're not definitive action films, but they start a change. And so, as always, I go, well, how did that happen? I go back a bit further. So then I started sort of putting that together, and the books has kind of become this journey through action, the evolution of action films, but how sort of like politics has kind of interfered with it, or they've influenced each other. So films like Death Wish and The Executioner, The Exterminator from 1980, like representations and reflections of New York politics and how the city was falling apart and how people felt they should be dealing with it. And the Death Wish films were literally cheered by New York audiences, and so it sort of went from there. And then I started to research the 1980s, and because I was looking at the 70s, I was obviously looking at Vietnam and the influence of Vietnam, and I was like, and it clicked. I was like, well, there are films like Hamburger Hill and Deerstalker and Platoon and so on and so forth, right? So there's all these Vietnam films, but they're not action films, they're war films, right? And often they're dramas, like no one's going to call Apocalypse Now an action movie, it's kind of it's a war drama. But then I'm like, but there is Rambo. And obviously, then there's like Chuck Norris is going to jump in to the fray at any point for anything. And so I was then looking at Delta Force originally, because that is another one that, basically plays out at the hijacking of a jet within 10 months of the event happening. Like,
that was shocked me when I was reading it in the chapter you gave me to read. I was like,
Cannon,
wow.
Golan and Globus are nothing if not opportunistic. Those guys, they're both kind of the Cannon guys, Golan and Globus, are kind of like both insanely inspirational to go like just get on with it and do this stuff, but also kind of horrifically capitalistic and kind of like scary how they just went about things. But that led me to Missing in Action and all this stuff. And I started to see these connections, and as you sort of see them together, then I hear about people like Beau Gritz, who was a real life guy who was funded by H. Ross Perot to go into places like Cambodia and into Laos. He was a former soldier, went into like these places to look for evidence of these camps because he believed that soldiers had been left behind. So I was like, this is crazy. And it kind of led to Uncommon Valor. So as I was watching them, I sort of put them together and was like, oh, there's a formula here. These three films kind of mirror the 80s in the escalation of action. Like, Uncommon Valor has action, but it's kind of still a war film. It's got action at the end. The whole end sequence.
A lot of dramatic elements, like the build-up, the characters, and again, it's doing a lot of the PTSD stuff that kind of Rambo started.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you get Missing in Action, and that's 83, and then Missing in Action is 84, which is no drama, just Norris all the time. And so, but that feeds in. That's again sort of like same thing. Like someone, I've even got 5 steps. Like these films follow. Like, but it's a guy going in, finding the troops, bringing them home. And you go, that's weird. And then literally 85, Rambo, First Blood Part 2 is exactly the same. It's like, oh well, now it's Rambo, all Rambo all the time. So yeah, it just kind of fed into each other. And the more I did, I was like, all these films, and then you start reading about the conspiracy that grew out of this, and then sort of the congressional Senate hearings, and you hear about like governmental oversight that was looking at these things, and you're like, this is kind of crazy that like these films and other things, books as well, in particular novels that were coming out that were saying like there are still lost POWs in Vietnam and the surrounding country, and something should be done about this. The people were listening, and a certain part of the population believed this. And so the government had to react, and so there were a number of investigations. I mean, I think the in the chapter I write, I think it's something like 60-something% of Americans still in 1991 still believed that soldiers had been left behind in Vietnam or were still in Vietnam.
I mean, it started even before the 80s, really, didn't it? Like it started
absolutely.
like 50s, 60s, into the 70s, and again into the 80s, and then even into the 90s, or investigations by like John Kerry and John McCain, like who are war veterans themselves, Vietnam War veterans, and they're going in looking. They're like, we believe it. We're here. We're going to find out what happened. We're going to, get our boys back, kind of thing. If there's anybody here, if people have fallen through the cracks, we're going to find it. And even they came out and said, yeah, we can't find any evidence whatsoever of this actually occurring. We've tried, we've looked, we've made the effort. And then all the people that are in on this and want to believe it are like, you're a liar, you're doing this dirty, how dare you betray the troops, how dare you do this? And it's like, it's I can completely empathise with families wanting to believe.
Absolutely.
Like, wanting to believe and wanting to... I watched a documentary, actually, called Unclaimed. I don't know if you've seen that. It's on YouTube. It's from 2013. And it's about a guy who is apparently a POW that basically just started living out there. He can only speak Vietnamese. He has, a wife and child over there, and he's kind of adjusted to a new life, and fell out of a helicopter, supposedly, had a thing, and this guy kind of finds him. He's a former Vietnam vet, and and he's making a lot of effort. They take out one of his teeth to do an isotope test to see like where he's from, and they say he's not from Vietnam. He's not from that area of the world based on that. And they link him to this one guy. He says, I am this one guy. I am definitely this one guy. And they look him up, they investigate, and they're like, you don't really look like him. Is it you? Are you sure? He can only speak Vietnamese, and he recognizes things, and there's various other things. And the family are like, the government are like, no, we're not going to see that guy. I'm not going to talk to that guy. And then there's like later on they talk to the family. They're like, we never gave any, because the government say we did a DNA test. It's not him. And then the family went, we didn't do a DNA test, So I'm like, fuck, like even you start to question it. You start to believe. You're like, is this guy, who he says? But then there's a theory. There's a theory that he is just a Vietnamese guy who is just trying to profit and go over to America and live in America, and maybe because that was another theory, is that the government doesn't want to pay reparations and things like that. So but again, I empathise with the plight and the worry and the concern, and the not knowing is horrible. The not knowing is the worst. I
think that's what fueled the majority of this. I mean, if you go back to like when this really takes place. I mean, the Vietnam War is a mess, an absolute mess of a situation. It lasts for like over a decade, and it's really messy. And that, like, the Korean War and stuff was didn't go well.
No,
but it was kind of well, we know what it is. It's the communist expansion into Asia. We've got to do something about it. It was kind of accepted. And Vietnam is badged with the same thing, but it's much, much messier because it's kind of all this guerrilla warfare. The oversight of soldiers is, minimal in some areas of the country. Like, young guys are sort of, given basic training, right? Here's your rifle. Here's your, your ammunition, a bayonet. Off into the jungle you go. Go kill baddies.
Yeah.
How do I know who the bad is? We don't care. Kill them. And people get blown up. Napalm's being dropped. Guns are it's a mess. It's an absolute mess. And when the war is officially ended in 73, the Paris Accords, and America starts withdrawing. One of the things is like, well, we want our POWs back, please. And the Vietnamese go, of course, here is a list of 591 people that we are going to return to you. And it becomes Operation Homecoming, and Nixon's very pleased with himself and all this other stuff. But, like, then the missing in action, the MIA list comes out around the same time. And that's 2,200 people. And everyone's looking at it going, like, hang on, this doesn't... are you telling me that there's 1,500, more than that, there's 1,700 people that we cannot account for? Where are they? And people in the army just go, I don't know, jungle somewhere. Radio might be dead. I don't know. They're shot, killed. Like, you know, there was no answers. That was the problem. Like, they just couldn't give answers. Now, this documentary you've mentioned is unclaimed. One of the things I did read, that there was definitely people that just went, balls to this, I'm off, and just disappeared into the, like, you know, either stayed in Vietnam, went into like Laos or Cambodia or into Thailand, and just sort of wandered off and were like, I'm kind of done with this. And just went and stayed in the South Asian area. And you go, all right. So there's definitely a population that happened to. Not a large population, but there was also examples of, like, they're still finding remains up until, I think, like I was reading, I think the last one was probably about 15 years ago. But they were like, oh, we found 20 bodies in this area, and they've all got, like, it's clear they're American soldiers. We found, like, you know, the remnants of uniforms and dog tags and this other stuff. So that's like 20 guys that just disappeared and were killed, and no one was to look for them. It just happened. Yeah. So you're right, that there's just this not knowing, and you know, that's kind of where because conspiracy grows out of lack of knowledge, doesn't it, or lack of answers. You know, I mean, look at Epstein. You know, the Epstein files is exactly the same. Like, I
knew we'd get there eventually.
No, might as well go straight there. But it's the same scenario, isn't it? This thing of, like, we have the answers, we have the answers, we have no answers. Conspiracy theory, because it's got to fill the vacuum.
This is, you know, quite similar to what's going on now, because Trump made a big deal about it. He was like, oh yeah, the Democrats are hiding it. Oh, the Democrats. Oh, they're doing this, they're doing that. They're all on the list. Blah 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 blah. And now he's turning around and going, oh, what list? What I don't know what you're talking about. And which is what Nixon did with the numbers in Vietnam, wasn't it? He trumped up those numbers, no pun intended, but he trumped up those numbers, and then when he came to go, oh yeah, I've got them all out, they're all out, we're sorted, great.
Well, his actual quote was, this is 74, so this was a year after the withdrawal, because at the end of the Operation Homecoming, he says, all our troops have returned home from Southeast Asia, and they have returned with honour. And as far as he's concerned, he's rubber stamping it. Oh, I'm done. Yeah. Done. I'm off to go and record some Democrats in the, you know, and
I'll just record Reagan making some really horrible remarks.
But that was it. As far as, like, Nixon in his administration were concerned, we're like, well, we've got the 591, we've done our bit, you know, we're over. And as you say, there's still sort of, like, you know, these 1,700 families that are saying, I'm sorry, what's happened to our son or our daughter or whatever? Like, it really just left this gap, and obviously as a gap gets filled with conspiracy. But they need evidence, and this is that thing, you know, with the Epstein files. There's evidence of, you know, what's it, like, proof of, what's it, lack of proof is not, what do they say, sort of like, is not proof of, you know, of there not being evidence. Like, lack of evidence is not evidence of a lack of a crime or whatever.
Yeah.
And there did start to be evidence coming out of Vietnam. And I think that the CIA and the DIA, Department of Interiors, and Department of something else, were in Southeast Asia, because they still stayed there. And they were getting, like, people were basically coming up to them, because they put out a reward for information. So people were coming up and going, I've heard there's American soldiers in this camp. Can I have $100? Yeah, you can. Thank you very much. And that, like, so, like, you know, they were
like the scene with Gene Hackman when he's trying to get information, and
exactly
then the guy rips him off.
And that's exactly what was happening. I mean, the Uncommon Valor is excellent for this. I mean, if we get to the films, I mean, the first section of Uncommon Valor is absolutely spot on, because it shows that evidence that was being provided was these first-hand and second-hand accounts of people going, like, I've seen soldiers, I've heard about stories about this, I know them, you know, all this other story. And as it was being investigated, there was nothing about it. There was nothing there. There was, you know, there was just nothing to it. But the other one is the photo, and in Uncommon Valor he has that photo, doesn't it? With it shows a 111. He perceives it as saying 111, which was his son's call sign. And this was the other thing, that was all these photos start coming out, and people are going, that looks like a 5 and a 3 and a something else on the roof of that. That looks like a call sign for this pilot and for this and for that. And all of a sudden, like, I forget what the numbers is. Is it all zeros or all something like that? Was like the SOS number symbol, some of them like the number call for, and these photos start popping up, and again fuels this idea that, or someone knows these call signs, someone's got to be doing this for these photos to be captured and stuff, and so that's what fueled Beau Gritz to go in, was the photos, and so and so then you get Uncommon Valor does exactly the thing. We should highlight that. I just want to say Uncommon Valor, directed by Ted
Kochev, yes.
Kochev, thank you. I was going to
me and Andy just covered Waking Fright, which is an excellent film if you've not seen it. Not an easy watch, and one that will haunt you and stay with you, which has done for a lot of my listeners who've seen it. But I do recommend it. I don't think Uncommon Valor is as good as that, or as good as Rambo. In fact,
I was going to say, because he did First Blood.
Yeah, exactly.
And so he's clearly Kochev is doing a good job, but and we'll talk about Rambo as well, the First Blood, because Kochev came out and was like, I have got nothing to do with Beau Gritz or Ross Perot or any of these things. And then you watch Uncommon Valor and you're like, really? Are you? It seems very similar to literally what was happening like 2 years before the film came out. Like, I'm kind of confused.
Funded by a millionaire?
So it all seems very iffy, but I like the fact that with Uncommon Valor it takes that realistic approach. It's trying to it has this kind of approach that is it's Gene Hackman for a start. It was great. Yeah, I love a bit of Gene Hackman.
Well, you get that credibility, don't you, with Gene Hackman, that a lot of these other films that I'm sure we'll get into don't necessarily have, in regards to like acting and and he did another film as well, which is kind of like the exact opposite of this, which was it Bat 21? Is that right? Bat 21?
Oh, I don't know.
He's like, he goes down under enemy lines and has to get back, I think. It's kind of like it's like the reverse of
no, you're right. You are, yes, because then he appears in behind enemy lines with
that as well. Yeah.
The dude Gene Hackman just loves just dropping into the other countries and, doing whatever he wants, clearly. I like the fact they approach it, but what this film it sets the precedent in this trilogy for several elements. But also there is this kind of weird element to this film that I'm not sure how I feel about.
Okay.
But appears in a number of films. And so, what you hear about is in the history of things, in the sort of like, the easy pop culture of the Vietnam War is like, that the soldiers were called baby killers and they were spat on by hippies and all this other stuff. And, that's kind of like a harsh, if true, kind of, stance that was taken. But there was the soldiers did not come back to a hero's welcome. If they they were either ignored or they were called out for their actions, and they're all dealing with PTSD. There's a lot of soldiers that come back and revert to alcoholism and drug use, and some incredible statistics about suicide. Linked with Vietnam vets over the next sort of 2 decades. An awful lot join police forces and cause endless problems in certain areas, because all of a sudden they have New York in particular had a kind of where tried to get rid of certain numbers of them, because they were like, they have snaps. All of a sudden they have like not as much flashbacks, but they just weren't treated. They weren't supported. They weren't given therapy. They weren't given support. Like, it was a real mess. But what these films keep showing is, like, they bring them back together, and they, like, especially in Uncommon Valor, when they're doing the training sequence, they fall back into the roles that they had in the war. There's that sort of like camaraderie and that brotherhood of the soldiers and all this other stuff, and all of a sudden, like the the anxieties and the stresses and the sort of like problems that they held in society kind of fall away because they're now in this structured environment where, you know, they've got the back, I've got your back and you've got my back and all sort of stuff. And I'm never kind of sure if it's trying to hold it up as a good thing or a bad thing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess you can see it as them regressing into that kind of killer, because they're trained to be killers. That's the end of the day. They are trained to be killing machines and to, you know, forget pain like Rambo does and all this other stuff. Like that's what it is. You know, Troutman like talks him up quite a bit. He's a really good hype man, Troutman. But you know, effectively he's correct. You know, that's what they want to do. So them going into that could be them, you know, again, they could, the work they've done mentally to you know, move away from it is arguably being reversed in a negative way, going back into it and, you know, indulging those, because they can't go out and like kill people and shoot people and live in the forest and set mines out and you know, dig tunnels or anything. That's not like, you know, as much as they'd like to, it's not, you know, normal, let's say, quote unquote, you know. But yeah, I guess you could argue that them, but again, I guess they have to do that because it's an action film, so we've got to get them to where they were. Yeah. To get to those big action sequences. Otherwise, they would just be, you know, it'd just be the end of Rambo 2008 and they all just get obliterated by a machine gun. I thought about, because I've been doing all this research for this podcast, so I thought about that I was around at Andy's house and I was just like, we were talking about that scene, how utterly fucking ridiculous that final section is. And we were like, should we just pop that on YouTube? And we were fucking laughing our heads off. There's a moment where a head just like pops off this guy's body straight up in the air, directly, vertically, and then there's other guys on a machine gun and his body's just like convulsing without a head. And it's just utterly fucking ludicrous, which is the kind of trajectory of the Rambo films. They just get more and more fucking ludicrous as they go
absolutely.
on.
If you read an interview, there's some great interviews with Stallone off the back of that though, where he's like, I wanted to show what the true horror of violence was, and you're going like, because it's a 50 caliber gun, and he's like, no, that's what would happen. And I'm like, how do you? I'm kind of curious as to how you know about this now. Like, you know, it's weird. So yeah, it is. It's so silly the end of that film. I still kind of love it. I ain't gonna lie. I love all the Rambo films are so sort of like damaged, but kind of fun in a weird guilty pleasure kind of way.
That's how I would describe it. I mean, if, you know, you can pick up on all the politics that we're talking about, and they're very evident in every single one. They are very evident, the politics and the political stance they take. But you can still enjoy them as just kind of like mad action films, like absolutely like batshit, silly, stupid, you know, balls to the wall sort of thing. You can be offended by them, you can dislike them, you could not agree with their stances on particular things or the way they depict certain things, absolutely. But if you want to view them as just fucking weird, wacky madness, you can enjoy that as well.
Well, I think that's. I mean, well, you know, I think it's worth sort of jumping onto that because that's sort of where we get to is that wacky madness. I mean, even Uncommon Valor kind of ends up in that position. Yeah. Like it has that kind of trajectory where it starts off and it's sort of, you know, I'm going to Congress and I'm trying to sort of present evidence. And I'm trying to sort of produce this for the congressman so I can show, you know, the evidence. I want the government to back me. Doesn't get it, and then kind of gets the money just to go and builds this team, and you have like the A-team sequence of them becoming a group. You've got
the Seven Samurai, the fucking Magnificent Seven, getting the gang together or getting the gang back together, which I feel like every fucking X-Men film has done for the past 20 years. I'm sick of that. Just have the X-Men together, just already.
Start together and just do it.
You don't have to do this every single film, like, we split up because of this and that. Like, I don't want that every single fucking film. Just get on with it.
No, but I like this, though it sort of has the ones he brings back together, like, have a reason to be there. Like, you know, they've have some sort of connection that either, like, he's lost his... Gene Hackman's colonel lost his son in the war. There's the big guy with the grenade around his neck, who was airlifted out and seen people left behind and has always felt guilty about it. And there's others, and then you get like a young Patrick Swayze, as sort of like, his dad went missing, and he's kind of like been trained so he can go look for him and all this other stuff. Like, it's kind of like, it again, from a conspiracy theory point of view, it has all these people that's like, here's the people that have been impacted by this, since the end of the Vietnam War. And so it kind of wants to deal with those, shows the real evidence that had been presented to congressional sessions and stuff, and then just drops them in the country and says, like, now we're going to do like crazy shit, like,
Yeah, this is where it's fun. We're going to just have some fun. Because again, they've talked about the PTSD and the wives and the partners and their lives that have not been great, and it's very serious. That like opening third or
absolutely
quarter takes it like deeply serious. It's talking about it. It's not playing it off, and it's all about Hackman convincing them to to do it, and to wouldn't you do it, and wouldn't you go back, and they're like, I'll never go back, I'm not. Again, it's the Ripley thing, which again has a lot of Vietnam kind of elements. Aliens does, and that's it. It's like, I don't want to go back, I don't want to experience that again, I'm over it, I'm past it, I've forgotten it. And I think Fred Ward's great in it. I think he's my favourite in it. Again, me and Mike talked about him a lot during the Forbidden Worlds Film Festival, and he's incredible. And I think he's the one that they go into it the most with, the PTSD element. He can't sleep, and he's making all these statues. He's married
the artist, isn't he?
He's making all these weird steel things, and Gene Hackman's like, I don't think he's left the war behind at all. I think it's still here, in this, all this kind of weird tangled, metal work. He's married to the mum from Malcolm in the Middle as well. Which I was like, oh, okay. She's like, I can't believe you won't take him. You won't take him. And that was another thing as well, that the wives, of the MIA POWs, like, got together and started campaigning and made a lot of headway as well. Like, convinced, various groups and politicians and what have you to, dig into this further. And I wouldn't want to say no to those women either. I'd be fucking more terrified than the soldiers that were missing. I'd be more terrified of them. Absolutely, yeah. And again, fair play. And why, given all the so-called evidence or lack of intel, I can kind of understand why people would pick up and run with that conspiracy theory, because, and again, if it's something you want and need and desperately, your mind's gonna make you believe that you're seeing zeros or ones in a rice field or what have you. It's going to do that because it wants to, and you want to believe it. That's the thing.
Pareidolia kind of thing, is it? Or that kind of, like, you're going to see things you want to see. But I mean, the other thing to say, you say about the distrust of these groups, like, the parents or wives groups and stuff. Let's not forget, like, it's not like the US government was, whiter than white before this to do with the Vietnam War. Even with the Vietnam War, they were like, are you dropping chemicals in Vietnam? No. What's Agent Orange? We're not going to talk about that until after the war, and then we're going to declare that people may end up getting cancer from being exposed to this.
That's what I read as well. I read that that there was no cancer in Vietnam until they dropped the chemicals. Because they ate quite well. They ate quite reasonably, quite healthily. And now it's got the highest rate of cancer, like pancreatic cancer in the world or something, because of that. For that one war, that's what. Well,
it got into the water. It got into the water supply. It got into all kinds of
changed
things.
that entire country. I just had a friend who told me she just came back from that, and I was like, how goes the war? Just. And she was saying how cheap it is out there, and I was like, "Yeah, I bet it's
I wonder why.
I bet it's fucking cheap to live out there. I'm sure you could live on a pittance out there, But that's it, isn't it? And it's fucking, like, it's terrifying, the whole idea. And again, I love, like, Platoon. I love an Apocalypse Now. I love the original cut. I'm not going to talk about all the other cuts. But there's something to that, and there's Oliver Stone was in Vietnam and had those experiences. A lot of it was based on his life there, and it was never like, I think I can't remember who said it, but it's a famous, I think it was like Francois Truffaut or someone like that, who said, you can't make a non-glorified war movie. Like, no matter what you do, because the way cinema is, you
Yeah.
can't make it like even the most kind of heart-wrenching and disturbing and disgusting kind of depiction of war. It's still kind of glorifying war because you're putting it on screen in a grand and kind of bombastic way.
I always think of like the opening of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, exactly.
So everyone goes like, because it's horrific, like it's
Oh,
horrible.
God.
Like
Yeah.
there's soldiers drowning in the sea. There's like guys being shot, and it's just like bodies falling. And you think this is horrific, but also you can't not go. It looked great though. Spielberg did a great job of filming this.
We all played that Medal of Honor game. We all played that.
Yeah. I think that's the problem, isn't it? You're right. It always look.
And like these films are no stranger to that. More so probably than obviously there are those films like Come and See, for example, that are just like horror after horror after horror, and it's not and you could argue that film isn't glorifying war, but then you could still make the argument that it is. But yeah, these films, I think, and again, it's a tricky, like you were saying, it's quite tricky, and the films are quite conflicted. Like they want to say something and they want to be current and political, yet they also want to have their cake and eat it, have the fun action sequences as well.
I think where they lead, I think as you said, the first half of Uncommon Valor is kind of like, here's the seriousness, like here's the conspiracy, we're laying out the politics. But then what they all want to do, and I think this is that thing we've said about the soldiers that came home and were ignored, or potentially were spat on, or at least were called out for whatever they may have done. These films start to try and lionize them. They're there to say, no, these are our boys, these were our soldiers, and sort of like, so that when these guys get together and you see that they're strong and they're a good fighting force. I mean, in Uncommon Valor, it's shown that like they're all a bit. They don't want to get up in the morning. The colonel's there waking them up, and then all of a sudden at the end of it, like he comes in, he's tricked, and they're all behind him, and they're all like an elite fighting force all of a sudden, and they're ready to go. And then once they get into Southeast Asia, like they get stopped by the local government and the CIA that's out there, so they just fall into the old ways of doing things of like, we'll go to the black market, we'll group our cash together and buy weapons, and we'll do this and we'll do that. So like all of a sudden they're this elite fighting force, and it's lionizing them. This is like then they go and they do succeed. They go in, they find the camp, and Patrick Swayze's character, who's never seen action before, faces action, and he's brave, and he manages to redeem himself. The guy with the grenade, whose name I keep forgetting, he redeems himself, and ends up diving on a bunch of Vietnamese soldiers with a grenade. Like he pulls the pin on the grenade, all sort of stuff, which is replicated in Missing in Action, which is weird, but like
that is odd. That is, it's not even, and that's how Missing in Action opens with a weird flashback dream of him remembering something he never did. Okay.
I think he watched Uncommon Valor the night before, and
probably, and
had the thing. But it goes into that place of like, these are heroes, and then it brings them home, and it brings them back to American soil. It's kind of weird because it literally flies them into like a commercial airport.
Yeah, and everyone's got this. The press is there, and they've got like, and again, this is not like a sanctioned thing. This is not like, because the politicians are like, stop, because we know what you're doing. Like, go to the millionaire. Robert Stack plays the millionaire, and he's like, we know exactly what you're doing. We know why you're doing it. Stop it now, or we'll stop it. We will stop this. And which is where the CIA comes in, because they know about them.
Yeah,
I got confused as well. I was like they do all this practicing with helicopters. Like, where do the helicopters come in? Because they're like on trucks, and they're driving, they're climbing, they're walking. And I was like, right, then they get the helicopters when they're at the camp. Got it.
Yeah.
But yeah, like it's definitely not something that's like being okayed.
No.
And again, that's where Missing in Action ends. Spoilers for all these films, by the way. Missing in Action ends just as he kind of kicks the door open, and as you said in your chapter, you don't see the ramifications of it. But like, it's just like, but yeah, and it was a bit like, was a bit weird. Like I was, with these films, I was like, oh, how well are they going to have aged, and how will they, depict the Vietnamese, and and the weirdest thing I thought about Uncommon Valor is that Gene Hackman's wife doesn't even have one line. Like she's just
there.
in it. And like even Tim Thomerson's woman, like his girlfriend who doesn't really like him that much, like she gets a full scene. I just thought it was so bizarre to pick one of the others. And even like Fred Ward's wife gets a moment. Like she gets a moment of what are you doing? I know you don't want every wife going like, why are you taking him? But like I just thought like,
but the Colonel's wife is like she's the one that should be, it should be like Adrian in Rocky, like
exactly.
Go and win this, find our boy. But I think that the ending of Uncommon Valor is very much a sort of, it's not. The other two become a heroic ending. They're like kind of like, there's much more of a sort of a fantasy fulfillment. This one's this one's a little bit more low key. I mean, Gene Hackman's character doesn't find his son. In fact, you find out he died. Yeah. He was taken, but he died of an illness.
Yeah, only like 3 months ago, something like that. So
it survived.
You see in the beginning, it's over several years. Gene Hackman is looking and doing and talking to people and researching this and checking with informants and stuff. So he's been doing it. He's been fighting it, and that's the inherent tragedy of it, that he goes.
But it's the knowledge. But he knows. He gets as we've said. It's sort of like that lack of knowledge is what fuels the conspiracy. For him, it's kind of a peace of mind. Like, I know what happened to him. I now know, and I can
know
move
where he
on.
was. I know how he died,
and I've been able to bring these other guys home, and so that's sort of where it ends. And so you're like, cool, good. That's the sort of ending. It's kind of I think there's a moment when he looks across and sees like some of the U.S. government people there.
Because it's Robert Stack's son is alive. And he sees them reunite, and kind of and you can see him almost kind of break down in the helicopter. I think Bong Joon-ho talks about Uncommon Valor. He's a big fan of it, and I think he talked about that moment, where he's realizing, his son wasn't there. He was dead, and he comes to that realization, and he was like, and Robert Stack's son saying, he saved my life. He saved my life. I wouldn't be here without him. And you coming back to get me, and and that's great, And again, like it works. I think the ending does work, and it's satisfying, and and it's I'll be honest, it's a very like weird cast of characters, like especially like the actors. You've got like award-winning like Gene Hackman, you've got like B-level movie stars like Tim Thomerson, Fred Ward, and then you've got like, all due respect to Red Brown, but he's not the best actor. However, I think he's pretty good. But then you've also got these upcoming stars as well, like Patrick Swayze. And then you've got, the guy with the grenade. I think he turns up in like Blind Fury with Rutger Hauer, and a few other things as well. And it's such a bizarre mix, and you think. And I even thought, I was like, Red Brown is actually good in this. Like he's actually like he's playing this like explosive expert. He's kind of a bit mad, and he tells them how he plants all the explosives.
To get I can get 6 consecutive explosions, isn't it? Of like he wants to break his record.
And he's like 7, 8, 9, when he's doing it, and then again like one of his bombs doesn't go off at the end, and he's like, he does that Red Brown scream. Kind of thing, which is great. It's good, like it's good fun, and but you kind of doesn't matter. Again, I think they even describe themselves as expendable, don't they? Because it does feel a bit like it's the Expendables. It is that idea. It is, and that's and you go back to it, and again, some of them die, some of them survive, some of them live, and things go right, things go wrong, and they get a different opportunity. But yeah, and that's another thing I noticed as well. Was like bandanas, M60s, scenes running towards helicopters. There's a lot of them, and then there's also like they're not actually at the camp. Like they get there and they go, the prisoners are not at the camp, which I think happens in all of them.
All of them, yeah.
So Uncommon Valor, they're just working in a field or something. And then Missing in Action, they're being moved.
They've been moved,
and Rambo, they've been moved as well. So yeah, that's another thing, which again is. Which again fueled that conspiracy theory like you're talking about, is them, we did find a camp but it was empty, or we did find a camp but there was no evidence, so we did do this, which is the whole part.
They've been moved. They've been moved on a cycle.
And that's what Murdoch in Rambo Part 2 is counting on. That's what he wants. He needs that to make sure that the US government don't bother going and spending all this money on a few guys as much as all the people, all the families want them to. He's like, no, we'll just do that. But that's when Rambo gets there, that's when he finds somebody, and that's when it all kind of comes
unravels.
Yeah, exactly. So,
moving on to the Rambo, before we do Rambo, let's do Missing in Action, because Missing in Action has that similar thing of, like you say, it's Chuck Norris as Colonel Braddock.
Not Brian Braddock. He's a UK superhero.
He is.
However, Spider-Man does appear. Spider-Man does appear, and the Shocker.
In the 60s Superman.
Do you think this was when Cannon was like vying for those Spider-Man rights? Do you think maybe
it was it was an Easter egg. Even at that point, they were doing Easter eggs of sneaking in what they wanted to do. But you say, like, he has that flashback at the beginning where he's escaping and ends in him jumping off a tower onto some Vietnamese with grenades and all this other stuff. And then he's approached to sort of go, we're here. Basically, they have been taken to Ho Chi Minh City, which is formerly Saigon, to have this conference. Basically, and he's there almost to sort of represent the soldiers. And the idea is to kind of bring this to a head to say there are none there, and the Vietnamese want the Americans to admit this, and then they can sign this sort of almost like a peace accord kind of thing of like put it to bed.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
But whilst he's there, of course, like Braddock's going to sneak around and he's going to try and find out, and he sneaks into somebody's room, and then he does his other bit, and he finds out that yes, they're up, and here's where they're supposed to be, and then he goes off and meets E. Emmett Walsh.
This one is definitely the most coldly indifferent to the Vietnamese people. There's no moment where there is one moment where he goes when the North Vietnamese army or the MVC or whatever they're called accidentally, while trying to kill him, kills some more Vietnamese people, but it is a blink and you'll miss it moment, and he says, you shouldn't have killed those people, and that's it. And then the rest of it is but
the implication is like, you shouldn't have killed those people because I was going to do
it. almost, yeah. And it's just like, oh Christ, and he's spitting, he basically doesn't want to shake hands, doesn't want to talk to them, and it's like, why are you even here then? We know why you're here. You're not going to do any diplomacy. There's never going to be any diplomacy when Chuck Norris is around.
No.
And he goes in, and I know, coming into this, Chuck Norris has lost his brother in Vietnam, so this is quite a personal story for him. They filmed these back to back. I read somewhere that Rambo came to Cannon initially for funding for Rambo. Is that right? Or?
No, they knew of it.
Ah, okay. But they didn't. He didn't speak to, because I thought maybe that's the Cobra connection.
No. So
because George B. Cosmatos, who directs Part 2, went on to do Cobra at Cannon with Stallone. So I thought that might be the connection.
I think Cannon just would hire anybody at any point for anything, to be perfectly honest. And obviously Stallone had connections with them already because of Over the Top.
Over the Top, yeah.
No, the interesting thing about this is that it was his brother Wayland was killed in 1970, but he was brought home, he wasn't missing. But,
he died.
Yeah, but Norris had always had this kind of the way I've read his biography. It's never said explicitly, but it's kind of like I wish I could have been there. Like I should have been there too, kind of thing. He was in the Air Force. I can't remember if he was in but.
It's not like a Mark Wahlberg thing where he says if he was on the 9/11 planes it would have turned out differently.
No, it's not so much he wants to go. No, it wasn't like he was like, I would have roundhouse kicked them into existence. Like it's not. This isn't a Chuck Norris joke. I think there's very much a if it could have been me rather than my brother kind of thing. I think there's a little bit of a guilt kind of seems to sort of be there about it.
Yeah. It was a younger brother, right? Younger brother.
Yes.
Yeah. So I protective kind of aspect to
exactly.
it,
I mean, he was off doing, he'd set up his martial arts school, and he was, he'd broken into sort of film by this point and was doing TV roles. So, I think there's a little bit of a, he was off fighting the war, and I was pissing about with
Survivor's
Bruce Lee
guilt,
kind of thing.
I guess.
I think a little bit. I legitimately think there's a bit of that. And so but he the point was he brought his friend in to write the missing in action script, and when they took it to the Golden Globus to Cannon went, yeah, we love it and we want to make this film. And what they meant was, we want to make a film called Missing in Action. So when he turned up to the meeting, they took the script, paid for the script, and then said, oh, we want the title and we want you, but we want to do this other film. And so they brought these other writers in and they made this other film. And the other film is Missing in Action 2, The Beginning. So they made that, and that was supposed to be the film. That was supposed to be the Missing in Action film. And if you've ever seen it, it's literally, that's him escaping from the camp. Like it's his origin story, if you will. And then when they were making it, they said, this is so good. We love doing this. And we've actually got enough budget to make another one. Because that's how they roll. So they sort of got some more funding to add on top of it. And they brought the guy back, Bruner, to polish up his script and align it with what they'd been doing for this other film. And then when they showed it internally, everyone was like, yeah, we like that one, we like the other one. Your sequel, we like the sequel one, can we have that? So they switched them around. So instead of it being Missing in Action 2, they switched them, and so the second one becomes a prequel because it should have been the original film. It's it's one of those sort of oddities.
Sure. I'll be honest, I didn't delve into the...
it's fascinating. I love Gold. The whole thing with Canon fascinate me as a kind of entity that, like, whenever you read stuff, you're like, how did you last as long as you did? Like, it's insane. It's brilliant.
Just fueled on cocaine. That's what it is. Just cocaine fueled.
Stories about Jean-Claude Van Damme knew that they were his best chance of breaking into film. He'd obviously done small parts of.
Wasn't he supposed to be in this one, and he had to leave or something?
Yeah, like he appeared in he was one of their go-to extras, but he was in Electric. What's it? Breaking Bad 2.
Yeah.
Electric Boogaloo. As a breakdancer in the background, and he'd done a couple of other things. And what he would do, apparently, would keep turning up to set and kicking people's hats off to prove that he could do these high kicks. And people were like, fuck off.
You're so annoying.
Who's this European knobhead that keeps turning up?
Belgian bellend.
Yeah. And eventually they sort of someone saw it and said, oh, I've got a kickboxing script he might be quite good for, and then obviously history was made. But
of course,
but back in this, it has that same structure, doesn't it? Like the sort of serious part is very short. Like it covers PTSD, it covers the idea that there is this tension between America and Vietnam, and then basically it goes into subterfuge and violence and Chuck Norrisisms.
It's definitely the worst of the bunch. I'm going to say that now. It's definitely
my
least favourite.
I think I still kind of love Chuck Norris films in a kind of unapologetically I know their shit, but I adore Invasion USA as possibly one of them.
You know what? That one, I've not seen many Chuck Norris films, but that one I kind of appreciate just because it's fucking mad.
It's insane. It's insane.
A weird Christmas. I'll have to do that one Christmas. Maybe you and Max or somebody get you both on.
I think I want to. There's another. I'll throw it in there. There's another trilogy of America Invaded trilogy. Invasion USA, Red Dawn, Toy Soldiers.
Oh, good shout! Good shout.
I mean, that's different, but that's a different podcast.
I mean, that could be the prequel for Patrick Swayze and Uncommon Valor, couldn't it? Red Dawn.
It could. Yeah.
Maybe.
But no, this one it has that same mentality. He's prevented by the Vietnamese. He falls back into the role of all the PTSD is gone. He's now back in the field and he's doing his thing, and it has that same kind of uncomfortableness of that Rambo's going to really address of being he's born to be a warrior. And you're like, I'm not sure how we should be celebrating. You're kind of glorifying this mental illness that you've imposed on these poor people.
And I get Chuck Norris is not the most successful actor. We'll see.
No.
It's very one note. It's very one expression.
I think one note's kind of
one note
pushing
is
it.
too much. Yeah. I'm giving it. And I just think there's some very long, unedited sequences of him, like that about the first half or an hour of the movie is just him sneaking into the hotel, sneaking out of the hotel, sneaking into another room.
The drain pipe sequence of him just sort of like hanging out. This is 10 minutes long.
I was like, fucking hell. And like Joseph Zito, I think, is the director. And I like some of it. Like, he did The Prowler. Speaking of like army shit, it's like a slasher movie with an army kind of protagonist. Got a little bit of a My Bloody Valentine feel as well.
Oh, okay.
And he did the final Friday, number 4, I think it was Friday.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So he can like do stuff and he can edit it, but I think he's more attuned to horror stuff. I think he did do some more action stuff after this. I think maybe that went down a bit better, but yeah, like I like it, but. And like I think Emmett Walsh is great in this. You know, I think he's always good.
He's a good character actor. He always just pops up. Yeah.
And again, it's like I'm never going back to the jungle. I'm never going back to Nam. Oh, all right. Well, I'll just go back to Nam. It's all right. Yeah, but I'll only get on the boat. Yeah. And then you guess it's like, you don't expect me to wait on the boat. I'm going to go in with you. And I'm like, oh well, I'll only sit here, wait with the gun, and like, well, you expect me to do that? I'll go get into the camp. You know, and it's like, yeah, of course. And there is a lot of humour to that. And again, some of the action's quite good, and him, you know, sneaking around and you know, enjoy it a lot. It's a lot of grappling. I noticed. It's just a lot of like.
It is,
and, you know, there's a lot of that.
Yeah, I kind of like this. Like I said, the silliness. They buy a bulletproof dinghy.
This is the thing I wanted to mention as well. There's two weird French guys who are arms dealers in Uncommon Valor and in Missing in Action. Yeah. Just missing it in Rambo. We don't have the arms dealer. But I was just like, yeah, and they've just got like a weird scar, and they're like, oh, I have all of the weapons. And then he's like, oh, we might kill you though. Yeah, just odd like arms dealer just out of nowhere. Bizarre.
Yeah. Again, it's another trope. It kind of, you know, but the French were involved. It's another trope because the French were there first in Vietnam. But I like this thing of like the bulletproof dinghy that they had, the speedboat dinghy thing. You're like, yeah, but you're stood up in it. Like it offers you no protection. All right, fine, it doesn't deflate, but like it offers you no protection. Like, it's ridiculous. And they're kind of pleased with it. They're going, oh yeah, we've got this bulletproof dinghy, and I'm going, hey, shit! What a stupid idea this is.
Not even 2 foot tall or 3 foot tall covering. It's like, yeah, if there was like a netting or like some sort of armoured top to it, but
it's camouflaged.
Like, it's like, oh yeah. And they fuck about with that dinghy like for such a long time. They're like, oh, drag it a little bit here, drag it a little bit there. We better bring it.
That's it. Whoever's on the production crew of this were very pleased that they got hold of that dinghy. They were very happy with themselves. It's quite fast, but they were like, oh, we're going to do this on the thing. This does lead to possibly one of the most iconic Chuck Norris moments. That's even ripped in Hot Shots Part 2.
Yes.
Is that he gets thrown off the boat into this river. And it's set up to be parodied. It's ridiculous. It then cuts to like 3 sort of Vietnamese soldiers on this lorry, chuckling of like, he's been thrown in the water. And then Norris comes out of the water in slow-mo with this big M60 and just sort of goes like, boom, 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 and just like shoots them all. Yeah. And I do go, I'm like, yes. Hot Shots had to parody this because it's almost parody itself. It's like, you know.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think the opening again running through the jungle to a helicopter. There's a guy who he's dragging somebody. He's trying to carry them to the helicopter again, which is the same for all these scenes. And this guy shoots a Vietnamese soldier, a different guy, shoots a Vietnamese soldier that's going to shoot Norris and the guy's carrying. And Norris gives him a thumbs up. Yeah. The guy gives him a thumbs up back and then is immediately shot dead. Yes. I was like, maybe don't thumbs ups in the middle of a firefight. You know? like, cheers, man. Yeah. Cool.
Find cover first. That's usually a good start.
And he's just like immediately killed. And again, we'll talk about Rambo 2 and humorous deaths, I'm sure. But like, I just was like, that is so fucking ridiculous.
It is ridiculous.
Overall, like, this was the one I did not have as much fun with.
No.
I'd say.
I like the thing I'd say about the ending though. You mentioned about the ending is like so because I feel this is important for how each of these films are kind of representing their point. The first one is kind of homely. We've come back to a commercial airport. We've kind of introduced this thing. In this one, like Norris literally sort of lands in a helicopter outside like the conference and stuff, dragging these confused and starved POWs.
Like the fall of Saigon or something. Yeah,
he drags them into the conference, and you have what's his name? He's one of my favourite sort of. He's one of those actors you pop up and you go, I like him. He's in Big Trouble in Little China.
Oh, James Hong.
James Hong. Thank you. Yeah. Is not the key villain in this? He's sort of saying again. He's demanding that the Americans should apologise.
I think he's dead by the end though. I think he stabs him in the bedroom, doesn't he? Kills
that's right. He's because he's the main villain.
And then they just replace him, which was a mistake for my money.
Yes,
keep James Hong around.
Always keep James Hong around because he's brilliant. Yeah. But they're demanding that the Americans sign this thing, and that there are no POWs to be seen. And then Norris sort of literally kicks in the door and drags in this sort of like half-starved, confused, like, look at this, and like everyone goes, and then cut to black kind of thing. That's the ending. But it ends with like Norris kind of staring at the screen.
Context.
No context. No follow-up.
Here's a dirty guy. Here's a dirty guy I found.
I've proved it. You could just say, it's a homeless guy off the street. I don't know what you're saying. Like, I don't know what the problem is.
Do you think they needed a bit of text after that? Do you think they needed
they needed like a sort of an epilogue scene, don't they? Like a bit of a small section of someone saying.
But back in the day, we didn't really have epilogue scenes, did we? Films just end like. I remember, like, I watched like even as recent as something like The Hollow Man, like with Paul Verhoeven. That when Kevin Bacon is dead, the film just ends. That's it. It's like, he's dead. End of story. We don't need to find out if these two, go back together or anything. It's just like dead. Yeah. And even as late as that, like films are like, no, this is just the end. This is it. We don't need to just really random and sudden.
You don't need an emotional wrap up. We've just ended. Just move on.
He's dead. He was the baddie. He was the lead. It's the Hollow Man is gone. The Hollow Man is out of the film, so there's no more Hollow Man. So that's the end of the film.
Yeah. These people are no longer missing in action. It's the end of the story.
We found them. They are back in action.
In conclusion, then, we categorically deny that there are any living MIAs in the People's Republic of Vietnam.
So the end of Missing in Action, you have this kind of Norris just looking out at the audience, and it kind of goes bump, and that's it. And it's kind of like, this gravel-faced kind of thing to sort of going like, sort it. And it doesn't have that, like, these, we don't know if the guys are returned to their families. It's just kind of a full stop. Like, there's more to be done almost. So it's not as satisfying as I would say as Uncommon Valor, that kind of returns them to their families and has this idea of like, there's a heroic or, satisfactory ending for this conspiracy. And then we'll get to as we get to Rambo, it's kind of like, as well, I'll jump to the end. With the end of Rambo, it's kind of like, it's on an airfield somewhere in Cambodia that's run by the CIA, and there's just kind of like this trust that it's going to be sorted out. Like, at least with Norris, it was in front of cameras. Like, there's people there taking photos, so it has a sort of a document. With this, it's kind of like, I don't even know if the CIA just could kill these guys and just could kill them off.
Because they don't know what... They've got no context of what he's doing. He's broken into this place. The press is there. Could be a fucking terrorist attack for all anybody knows, or a militia or whatever the fuck. He's flown in a helicopter that could have been shot down. Like, there's nothing there, and And that's it. I think it's like I think you're correct. I think it's like, you fucked up America, you fucked up government, sort it the fuck out, or I'm going to fucking sort it out, kind of thing. Which is a little bit of the Rambo thing, but not quite as kind of blunt, I think, as what it's saying, which is kind of, and again, like Reagan, like we're going to talk about Reagan, like this was his kind of whole thing. Like there was a lot of like he saw Rambo and he thought that as a critique of the Jimmy Carter administration and the handling of that hostage situation, which again, I thought poor Jimmy Carter, like literally the day he was working up to the minute, like literally hours of the minute he was going to finish being the president, he was trying to sort out that hostage situation, and just to fuck him over the day Reagan is like sworn in, or the day he takes office, it's solved. And then Reagan announces it himself, like he's the conquering hero, like he's sorted it out, And Reagan is fascinating. I watched a 3-hour documentary, and it's absolutely fascinating. I watched several other bits and pieces. Like, he starts off as this kind of like somebody who comes from nothing and got a lot of, the New Deal and everything, got a lot of kind of help there, very liberal, formed the helped form the Screen Actors Guild, was the president, did their first strike. It's crazy to see how he kind of shifted. But I guess it's the same with Churchill. Like, he started off fairly liberal,
became less so,
and did the whole as he went on. So I guess it's the kind of the journey a lot of people take. But it was really, really fascinating to look, because I didn't know as much. I knew it. I got a bit of an idea, but I learned more and more about him as we went on. And there was a moment where he was like condemning Israel's forces for massacring, women and children, Palestinian women and children. I thought, fucking hell, like Trump is the blueprint. He's following the blueprint, really, of Reagan. even almost got assassinated like Reagan. What a coincidence, eh? Speaking of conspiracy theories. There's so many kind of elements there, and his whole his strength, like peace through strength, and that idea, and his absolute condemnation of any communist regime, and making sure they don't make any forward movement, take any ground, and what he would do, and the Iran-Contra thing, and so much is kind of baked into these films, as you've said. However you feel. I know Stallone said that like Rambo's a bipartisan character, which I think you can kind of with the second one you can kind of maybe get away with that. I think Rambo 3 onwards, I'd argue probably
I think
not.
by that
Probably
point, I think
not.
Reagan is absolutely right that Rambo is a Republican. I think that point it's undisputed at that point. I think it's just there.
There's even images of Trump that are mocked up to look like Rambo.
Yeah. Oh,
so
no.
it's
there were T-shirts that there was, Reagan to look like Rambo, and also other stuff. Like it was a big thing. And he was caught. Was it on a cold mic or a hot mic? Sorry, by accident, saying about Reagan was sort of, he'd watched First Blood Part 2 and said watching this tells me how to deal with those terrorists, kind of.
Yeah, I know how to handle the next hostage situation. So I think he said something like that.
We should highlight that Reagan kind of idolised Rambo as a sort of a personification of American foreign policy. This idea of the muscled military genius,
virile.
This is it, going off and fighting the wars for us and single-handedly and all this other stuff. I mean, Stallone and Reagan, they were close. There's stories of them sharing phone calls whilst on the set of Rambo 3, like Reagan, and so it's never clear what those were, but there's some people that reported that foreign policy was discussed.
I'm sure it was.
By that point, because obviously Reagan, tragic for anybody, clearly had dementia and Alzheimer's, and so
dementia.
There's never a clear distinction of did he know he was talking to Stallone and
was it
Rambo?
How do you
at that
distinguish
point?
them?
So I don't know, but no, it's quite clear that Reagan had this idea of the lionized America. Like America was, to him, I think he seen it as they'd had this kind of thing of post World War II as like America is the light on the hill, the sort of the lantern of justice and democracy and all this other stuff. And that's what he saw, but he sort of kind of like saw it, and he wanted to materialize that thing of speak softly but carry a big stick. The Roosevelt kind of mentality. And so, but he wanted to do it like speak softly but like beat the fucker with a stick. I think was probably more accurate. But that was his thing. It was all about might is right, and it's strength through peace through strength. And so he was very much kind of, he loved being compared to Rambo. So when, like Ronald Rambo was one. There's a T-shirt you can find online. There's a Ronald Rambo kind of thing.
Yeah, there was. Well, the mock-up they made for Rambo was actually made in the White House. It was made by the staff. It wasn't just like oh, someone's making fun of him or having a joke. They were like, no, he wants to believe that. Like Trump would love that as well. Trump would love being compared to fucking Rambo. Know he would. And that's and it's strange as well. And like even into his his I was going to say regime. I guess you could call it a regime. You could say his presidential run. He made a POW MIA day. He founded a day based on that. So he clearly believed the Jimmy Carter administration. I don't feel like the first Rambo is a direct attack of like Jimmy Carter. I think it's just the whole war and the way soldiers are treated in general on their return, and why they were there and what they were doing. I don't think specifically those 4 years or however long he was in.
Have you ever read the novel, The First Blood? The novel.
I have not. Me and Andy did a video on it a few years ago, but I know it's a bit more balanced. It was more about the cop is a veteran of the Korean War, and it's like the mistakes made during that one and the mistakes during this one, and if people could talk a bit more and talk out the problems, that maybe we wouldn't have people that have such strong mental health issues. And then I think Rambo dies at the end, and he kills people, which they changed the film. Am I right?
No, you're right. The book is it's not it's not a classic. It's but if you like the Rambo films, it is worth checking out. It's relatively short, but it does have this idea that it shifts perspective like every other chapter to
no one's necessarily the villain or the hero from either side.
Yeah, they keep making assumptions about what's going to happen, and the assumptions. So like. Yeah, Teasel makes his assumptions about what Rambo's going to do, and sort of and ends up having killed someone. So he's driven by this responsibility as the sheriff and all this other stuff. And so, and then Rambo's his fear, and he's like, well, they're going to kill me, so I've got to kill them. I've got to survive. It's all about I was taught to survive, and it gets through his mentality. And he is actually killed by Troutman at the end.
Right.
And it's not. And what's fascinating is like they change a couple of things. They do tone it down because Rambo kills a bunch of people in the book, and young people, like brutally kills a couple of people because during the search in the book, in the film they have the National Guard doing all the search, and he traps some people and he threatens to kill them and says basically like I could have done, think about all the things I could have done.
Yeah.
In the book, it's like I'm going to show you all the shit I can do. And it gets kind of messy. And at the end, but Troutman in the film is very much like a father figure, isn't he? He's kind of like, he trained Rambo. Like, I'm the one that made him the machine and all this other stuff. And he feels responsible for him. In the book, he's the headmaster or the head of the school that trained Rambo.
Right.
So he's like, I'm kind of aware of him, but like, I don't know him. I'm here to tell you, like, here's the things that we trained him to do. And at the end of him, it has that a similar-ish speech where he's kind of like, you taught me to do this, but not these things. And Troutman just blows his head off with a shotgun. And it's just like, he kind of acknowledges, he acknowledges the failure in that, like, you cannot go back into society. Like, you need to be ended here. I mean,
you're too
I mean,
damaged.
the book starts with Rambo already having killed 2 people. Like, he acknowledges it. It's like, because he's living on the street. He's like a hobo. And he's basically sort of like, some guy tried to steal his backpack, and so he stabbed him to death. And he talks about something out in this bar. So it's like, it's not like, the film version is much, much more sympathetic.
I watched the film recently. It was really good. It's called Cutter's Way. I don't know if you've seen it. It's a Jeff Bridges film, and it's got the dad from Home Alone, who's amazing in it. I highly recommend it. And it's basically the director and the writer were like, he was concerned about all the kind of positive Vietnam movies that were coming out. So like, I think there's one with John Voight, which is like Coming Home, which is like, these heroes, and they should be respected, and they're all wonderful, great people who went to war and came back.
Really, from John Voight?
He was like, no,
shocking.
Yeah, I know. So, yeah, I know, right? And he's like, that's not necessarily true for all Vietnamese, Vietnam vets. There are people that come back and they're scarred and damaged and dangerous. And that's what the character in Cutter's Way, the character Cutter is, he's missing a leg, he's missing an arm. And he is not a nice guy, at all in any shape or form. But the story is him trying to do one kind of good thing before he ends. But I will not spoil the film. But I do recommend giving it a go. I think it's a cool little, and again, it's got a bit of a conspiracy vibe to it as well. So I think you'll dig it. Very, very kind. It's kind of like. It's like Chinatown for the 80s.
Okay,
almost,
interesting. I'll look at that.
So give it a go. But yeah,
make a note of that.
Yeah, make a note of that. But yeah, I like that aspect as well. Like that kind of like, he's not. Again, I know that they rewrote it, and it. And I think I like Rambo. I think Rambo is a solid film. I think I did see like him critique it quite harshly. Like originally it was like, the script was shit and it's awful and I can't do it. I wouldn't do it. I'm going to rewrite it. I mean, he rewrites every fucking thing he's in, doesn't he? But
basically, so the film itself is about an hour. It's about a 90-minute film. Like, it's not, the first one's not a particularly long film. But apparently, the original, there was a cut that was over 2 hours long that they were taken, and he's like, remove all these dialogue scenes because they just don't work. That there's no point. Like, reduce my dialogue down, and I think it's the right decision.
I guess it's like the Clint Eastwood thing, isn't it? Like the less you say as the man with no name, the more
exactly
power it
that
has.
I think, and that's the idea. But it makes him more sort of internal and sort of sympathetic. Like, he's not shouting, and when he does shout at the end, it kind of. It's bubbled over, like, he's sort of boiled over into this sort of situation. But the first film has this, is it's a real kind of somber film. It's, a guy just trying to get on. He's come to see his friend, but you find out his friend's died of cancer due to Agent Orange. And then sort of Teasel just wants him out of town because he's a hobo, and he's sort of pushing him on. And it's sort of, don't push me, and all that. It works in that sort of sense of, especially it's good that it's small town America. It's kind of, so the film ends with that story he tells about being in Vietnam and his friend getting blown up, and it's the horrors that he had to go through, and he's sort of like, it's clear that like he's not, he's got clear PTSD, he's not well, doesn't know how to integrate back into society. Like, he's like, over there, I could fly a $1 million helicopter. Here, I can't even get a job in a diner. Like, it's just this shift in like the power dynamic and the worldview, which is this whole thing again about them resetting into this thing. And so the first film is all like in America. There is no resetting. There is no brotherhood. And when you get the second one, and this is where I have a real problem. I think Colonel Troutman is one of the worst people in like this one, because he basically sort of says, he's damaged, but we can use that mental illness to our advantage. You're like, you are a terrible person. Like,
But then he says in the third one, he's like, it was always there. We just shaped it. We just chipped the rock away to find a kill him. Yeah. Absolute bullshit. That is absolute bullshit. A young lad, you take him under your arm, you're like, you were always a killing machine. Fuck off.
So I've always thought that Troutman is a terrible person.
Yeah, well, he's like a Dr.
Yes,
Loomis, isn't
exactly
he?
like
He's like Dr. Loomis is not a good psychiatrist in any shape or form, and Troutman is not a good.
Yeah, Loomis should be in the room,
general.
in the padded room next to Michael. Really.
Yeah, exactly. In the same one.
But I mean, in this, but in the second film, we sort of, Rambo's now in prison, and in the third one, he's found peace. Like, he's literally living in a monastery. And Troutman's like, I've come to fuck up your life some more. And you're just sort of like, no, this is really mean. Yeah. But in this one, it's like, I've given you a chance. And it's that line that Stallone, like Rambo says, do I get to win this time? And that is everything in these films. That's all these films have been about is we were let down by the government. We were let down by the senior, military figures. We were let down by this. We're like, do we get to win this time? Do we get to do it our way? And I think that's always been the factor in all of these POW films is like, I want to be redeemed and I want to be respected for what we did. And I think that's the sort of the core of them. And as you say, Reagan felt that. I think Reagan absolutely believed it, and he was a massive fan of First Blood Part 2.
I can see why. But again, it's weird that because it is quite anti-authoritarian, anti-government. That's why for me, I'm like, I can see the Reaganist politics in it, but I also still feel it's got some holdover from that first film as well. It's not so much about that, but then Rambo 3 onwards, absolutely.
But the thing is, even with Reagan's politics was Republican verging on libertarian. Like, it's kind of like small government. Yes. It's all about yourself. Greed is good. All that kind of stuff. It's capital. He was all big business and military power, military might. But like you said, he started off anti-government. Absolutely,
he was very anti-government. So that makes sense. I think
Reagan always felt, even as president, kind of anti-government in that position, which is
that's why the third one is very telling because bloody Clarence Boddicker comes in. The dad, Red from the 70s show, comes in. And he basically doesn't talk to him, but he doesn't like disrespect him or try and stab him with a knife or anything. He's just like, just get me in there, do it. And again, there's no like critique of the American industrial military complex or anything. It's just like, let's get over there and help a group that some of them may splinter off and become the Taliban. And again, that's what I feel like in First Blood Part 2 is the pushing the Reagan thing is like, Vietnam were the baddies that time, but now the new baddies are the Russians. Here they are. There's definitely a shift towards what would be Rambo 3.
The CIA are always going to be this sort of shady piece. I mean, you have like of course, the CIA guy in this who's there. Murdoch is it? Yeah. And again, like you say, the difference between this and 3, where the CIA guy turns up and they're like, "Oh, he's all right." Hey, what? No, that's not the stance you had before. It's slightly changed.
Yeah, because he says in First Blood Part 2, "You're the only person I trust." Like he doesn't trust anybody. And I got like a really like neurodivergent vibe when he was like walking around and he's kind of like not really listening, or he's like drifting and not paying attention and stuff. And he's like, no, I am actually listening. I'm just looking at all this bullshit you've got and technology. Which again is him. That's what happens at the end. He's like, all this technology and all this bullshit doesn't mean anything. M60 to everything, and like that. Like that's his. That's the message of this film is that no, it doesn't matter all this because it's all just making money and greed and like not holding up, responsibility for what you did or the bad intel or the bad military practices, whatever the decision is, and that's him like absolutely just going off.
That ending as well. As you say, he walks in with his gun, as he sort of shoots up in the air, and then he gets Murdoch and he sort of threatens, like stabs the knife down next to him, and we've got that escalation. Like we've had the homely visit in Uncommon Valor, we've had the gruff beardy face of Chuck Norris staring out into the audience to sort of like, now we explicitly have Rambo saying to Murdoch, He might as well be looking down the camera, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah.
Just saying,
No, absolutely.
you know there are more out there. Find them, or I'll come back and get you. And, you know, it's you can't get it any more explicit. And then he sort of walks off to his brother singing him a lullaby. But to be clear, Frank Stallone singing the end title. It's always weird. Yeah.
Oh God.
Nepotism at its best. But
yeah. Oh, dreadful song. Dreadful song. But it is Frank Stallone, so there you go. But then even the third one, where they end with "He's not heavy, he's my brother," I was like, "That's a fucking choice you've made there, Christ." But yeah, absolutely. And you know, we were talking about like funny deaths earlier, but like I remember I read on the IMDb trivia that he edited it because they did a screening of the death of the young Vietnamese girl and the agent. She dies. She's like, I love you. I want to go to America. And he's like, yeah, we'll go to America. Don't worry. And then literally like a second later, she's like, dead. And I remember when I first watched that, I burst out laughing. This was like was a teenage boy. But even now, it's still funny. And the fact that I know he cut it because people were still laughing in the cinema because he did like a big no kind of thing. And I was like, no matter how you edit that, it's still bad. Funny. Yeah, it's still like I love you, dead. You know, it's like absolute. That's like fridging at its absolute maximum.
Yeah.
It's like finally I've accepted you. I've accepted this. I'm gonna move. I'm gonna change my ways. I'm gonna accept the American way. You're dead. You can't do that.
And slips slips right back into the military way. All of a sudden, he's like, it's all, you know, he's the machine, he is the killing machine. And it's again that thing of like, that you become uncomfortable with, of going like, you know, we've trained these soldiers to be killing machines and that's where they live. And you go like, this is really highlighting how badly we treat, like, our soldiers, our military. It's like,
well, they're like the tools, aren't they? They're not people, they're tools, they're instruments of war. They're, you know, like a M16 rifle or a tank or a whatever. It's not a person. That's the problem, is when they come back, they don't know how to treat them as people because they've seen them purely as weapons and tools to further their political or, you know, capitalistic way of thinking. You know, that's the tragedy of it. You know, and yeah, and even him getting back into it isn't without its like scrapes. Like him getting out of jumping out of the plane is like, oh, he's hung up. Yeah. He's like, no. And I love it. It's very. I love the kind of trope where he's like, we're going to give you all this amazing weaponry and high tech gadgets and all this. You're like, oh, it's going to be like James Bond. Yeah. And then immediately it's like, no, I just got a big knife and a bow. That's all I need. I forgot this about Rambo as well, that he's like he comes from like Native American descent.
Yes.
I was like,
yeah,
and I was like, okay. Now when I saw that, when I read that, I was like, oh yeah, like. I guess that's why they have the bandana, they have the arrow, they have the big fuck-off knife. You know, I can see that. But I was kind of like, I don't think Stallone is any of that in his ancestry.
I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure.
He's got black hair, and, you know, he's Italian. He's, you know... Yeah.
Long, it can make it long, and he's a hunter tracker, you know, that kind of thing going on. And yeah, I was like, okay, I never knew that, but I guess it's another wrinkle. Yeah. I mean, that could have. I mean, why didn't they explore that in one of the films if they were going to do it? Like that would have been
especially
interesting.
Considering he is home in the last one, you know, like.
Yeah.
In John Rambo, like they could have just gone, yeah, we are going to explore something but no, we're actually going to talk about border controls.
The more problematic politics in that one. I remember going to see that, and I did enjoy it for the most part. It's not great, but I kind of was like, I was looking for a film I could turn my brain off to. But yeah, looking back on that, I'm like, it's not
Rambo
not
just
the best time
basically.
That was the thing I noticed in your chapter, which I didn't realize. It was like every time a Rambo film has come out, it's been a Republican president in office, and I was like, yes, I see.
It's no surprise.
I see. Another conspiracy. Yeah, no, I was like, that's another interesting wrinkle.
There's no
to the whole Rambo's bipartisan.
Yeah,
I was like,
there's no Clinton Rambo. There's no. He's busy. Yeah, Stallone's busy jumping off cliffs and being frozen at that point. But yeah. No, but I think the thing is, especially with 2, I mean, yeah, the silliness escalates. The bow and arrow with the explosions that, like, I've got this tipped arrow that's got explosives in it. That's the power of like a neutron bomb, and you're just like, oh, cool.
God, yeah.
Like Michael Bay before Bay. I mean, it's kind of, you know.
That guy gets it who kills. I think is it Ko? Is it Ko the character? Yeah, like he absolutely gets it. It's like it reminds me of that dry explosion in Blade 2 from Norman Reedus. It looks exactly like that, and I was like, yeah, he got it. But you knew he was going to get it back.
Well, it's the way he's positioned on the rocks on that waterfall. Like, it's as central as possible because they've clearly got like 6 cameras on it. And then, we're going to record it 6 times, and then you're going to see it 6 times just because we've got it. Yeah.
It's very satisfying.
Good. I mean,
very
it is,
satisfying.
In the ending as well, even the ending as well, it has the sort of there has to be a helicopter because it's Vietnam, and Vietnam is linked with those sort of helicopters. He downs the helicopter, pretends to be dead, and then fires the rocket out the window to shoot the Russian helicopter down.
Yeah, playwright Stephen Burkoff.
Another great 80s villain. I love, again, Stephen Burkoff. He's up there as one of those sort of...
Well, he was in Beverly Hills Cop, which was originally a Stallone project that became Cobra, that was directed by George P. Cosmatos, and again starred Stallone. They're all connected.
6 degrees of 80s movies.
Reaganism.
But no, it is. You can... But just to highlight how big... I was going to sort of highlight this, because I was curious, so I did double check where these films, come, because like Rambo 2 is the most successful Rambo film. I think it was the most successful film of 1985.
Really?
But Uncommon Valor cost $14.5 million to make, made $30.5 million at the box office. That's pretty good. All right. Missing in Action cost $2.5 million, and it shows just to throw it in there.
Yes,
and it made $22.8 million at the box office.
Fucking
hell. So you're already getting there's clearly this market is there. Yeah, Rambo cost $25.5 million to make, and made over $300 million at the box office. And I believe, I'm not sure if that's international or domestic. I don't know, but
still either way.
It's
still
huge.
Good. Like in the 80s, like if you do, that's that you're talking like probably billion.
Oh, that's
a
$1 billion film today. That's
nowadays,
$1 billion film today.
Today that would be a billion. I mean, that's with inflation and stuff.
I think from what I understand, it's Stallone's most successful film of the 80s. Like, it outstrips all of the Rocky films, and even like Rhinestone Cowboy and everything else that he did. Shocker.
Amazing. But I always find that quite interesting. Like, thinking about when does Rocky 4 come out? When's that? 87?
Same year.
85. So same year. That's so weird, because like Rocky 4 is such, like, obviously it is the Cold War, like, we're gonna beat you, blah blah blah. But the ending is such kind of like a positive ending, like, if you can change, then we can change, and I can change, and you can change. There's a feeling of like let's end it, as opposed to let's beat you. We have beaten you. We have beaten you.
Yeah. Rocky and Rambo are like two sides of the same coin. If like I've always got I've kind of had this in my head canon. It's like a sliding door scenario. There was some sort of like young Italian American kid, and one of them took, in one version he took up boxing and joined a local mob in Philadelphia, and in one version he signed up and went to Vietnam. And this is the two trajectories. But no, like, Stallone has a very it's still very pro-American, isn't it? I mean, it is positive of like, if you can change and I can change, we can change. You say all that. It's still like he's still wearing the American shorts, like Apollo's American shorts, true. And he draped in the American flag as he sort of is held up by Duke and
And even like at the end of the Cold War, Reagan didn't go, "We won the Cold War." Like he didn't go like, "We beat them." You know, we came together, we found, you know, common ground, what have you. Like, but yeah, in these fantasy films, you know, Rocky beat back the Iron Curtain. You know, he brought down that wall. You know. That was another thing I forgot to mention, is that in the 90s it was Yeltsin, wasn't he? He said, "Oh yeah, we some of the Vietnamese prison camps that had American soldiers, they probably came to the USSR."
Yeah.
I was like, why the fuck did you say that? Why the fuck would you bring that up? Like, why?
Just really say, like, just you know, we're friends now, so I just want to share
casually. Yeah,
just
casually.
want to share some information you may want to know. Yeah,
but nobody was like, let's go into the USSR and take it. Nobody was saying that. Come on, let's get the boys back from the USSR. No, they weren't.
Can we go have a look at the Gulag? It's cold there. I want to go back to Vietnam. It's nice and warm.
Probably dead.
It's nice and warm in Vietnam. I want to go back to Cambodia. It's lovely there. Yeah.
Yeah, but I thought, what a fucking weird comment to make in the middle of like when it's all kind of died down, and then brings it back up again.
It kind of came from, I don't know if you've read this. There was a letter, and whether or not it's still to this day disputed. There was a letter,
right?
A memo that was from the Kremlin that mentioned American POWs. I think it was released in like 1982, possibly. Right. And it mentioned like a number, and it was like 100 or 200 POWs and sort of thing. And it caused a bit of a ruckus. Like, it really did. It sort of, you know, the government didn't know what to do about it, but they couldn't validate it. They could not prove it one way or the other. And so they kind of had to leave it. But there's been this thing of like, for years, of like, is it valid or is it not? And people have gone like, it's the right letterhead, it looks like this, it looks like... But then others are saying like, no, it's not. It's kind of paper that would have been used like 5 years before and all this other shit. So like, it's clearly a forgery.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, so it was around for ages. So this kind of thing of the USSR being involved, obviously it was a communist expansion, like was there. But yeah, it is an oddity. Like, it's, you know, this thing of the USSR being involved and that,
because they were backing, like, you know, communist or socialist like countries and groups. They would support them, but they didn't have like, they weren't like directly connected. Like, they weren't
there was
they would just be like, here's some support morally and financially,
militarily
and,
to begin with. At least, but like, it was kind of like, I mean, that's what happened with Afghanistan. It was like, it kind of, you know, that's obviously where Rambo 3 comes from. But but like the government collapsed, and all of a sudden the Russians sort of popped up and were like, hello, you know, we'll help. And then it became the dispute of it being a Soviet country. But again, like, at this point, by that point, like, Russia was really on the back foot, and you had like Glasnost, so it was kind of sort of, it was trying to westernize and
perestroika.
Yeah, so it was kind of like, it was already on the out, and, you know, as you say, sort of like, you know, Yeltsin and stuff or Gorbachev was reaching out and was trying to sort of bridge the gap, and sort of like, you know, you have Reagan sort of say, you know, Mr. Gorbachev, bring down that wall. And Gorbachev's going, I'm bloody trying. I'm trying. Like, my government...
I'm working on it.
If you just...
People think that speech did it as well.
No, it was...
Fuck off.
It was, again, opportunistic. Like, they already knew that Russia was on the massively on the wane.
That's, again, I think, leads to the thing where, like, Reagan won the Cold War. No, he didn't fucking... No,
Russia destroyed themselves. Like, it was the art of collapse, I think, the internal collapse of all that.
Yeah.
But,
and like, you know, and Reagan's kind of... Reagan, like, we could talk about a lot of Reagan policies and how poorly and well they went. You know, the Reaganomics, the potential introducing of crack into black neighborhoods, the AIDS epidemic.
The conspiracies around all that is...
Yeah, exactly. Like, there's a conspiracy theory of every Reagan alley you want to go down, and, you know, I've been down some of them. You know, this just researching for this. It's fucking mad, absolutely mad.
Reagan's one of these odd. It's a real kind of he's an actor, as we know, right? You know, becomes governor of California. And does a surprisingly good job. And this is the weird thing of, like, when he's the governor of California, like, you know, not a great job. You know, he's not a liberal by any stretch.
No.
But during the sort of like where like New York is on the decline in the mid '60s, and San Francisco was is always been a bit of an outlier in California, but other parts of America in the '60s were like, you know, were having problems. California was roaring. And he was doing a relatively good job. I don't, you know, granted again, I don't think he had to do much, but like, you know, he managed to have.
But he was underestimated.
Oh, absolutely.
Like say what you will about him. Every single political opponent underestimated what he knew, how he did it, his connections. You know, the deals he made, and like that's why he kept doing it so well. And you know, even though he failed two presidential attempts, I think. And that he'll still succeed. His team was still there.
Yeah, he went up against Nixon. He went up against Nixon, I think, in 70.
Yeah, I think was it his kitchen cabinet they called it or something
Possibly.
like that. I think the group. And that's where like the Project 2025 thing comes in, because his plan came from this group. Again, I'm forgetting the name off the top of my head.
It was the
they came up with this,
the New Right Christians, wasn't it? The New Christian Right.
Yeah,
that
something
was
like
sort
that.
Of Billy. What's his name?
Yeah, all the funding. I can't remember exactly, but there's a group that came up with that his plan, Reagan's plan, and then that's
Billy
where
Graham.
Trump went to. That was it. I thought he was. I
Not
thought he was a
superstar
wrestler.
Billy Graham. Just a
Right,
different Billy Graham. Yeah.
The other Billy Graham. But yeah, like that. Yeah, don't get me started on those kind of.
But I think the thing is, you see, and we talk, you know, about this, as you sort of said, you know, the comparisons to like the Epstein files and all that conspiracy and everything else, and the QAnon and all the other conspiracy that exists today.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of comparisons to be made between Reagan and Trump. I mean, you know. One of the reasons Reagan was so successful, as you say, he had some very good people around him, and you know, Nancy was a very sort of devoted and supportive wife, so he had that kind of the Christian values around him, so the Christian right, and supported him. And as you said, they backed him through this ideas of the new evangelical, you know, which leads to like some of my favourite things, like the Satanic Panic, and you know, and those things, which are always fun to look into. But it was just so charismatic. He was an actor, and he knew how to play to the camera. I sort of quote. I'm going to butcher it or paraphrase it, but basically, it was kind of like he was the first. He was the first president to basically perform to everyone, and that was the kind of thing. Like, you know, there was never an off. He was always sort of like, you know, he knew he had to perform. He was always this sort of like, you know.
Yeah, it could stick to a script,
exactly.
which
at least for the first term. I mean, the second term was probably he couldn't.
Yeah, maybe not so much.
But
but that was part of his training.
Exactly.
Part of what he did. He was a radio host even during his presidential run. He was doing these weekly radio announcements because that's how he kind of started off and everything. And yeah, he's an odd duck, and you know, there's so much, like, you could make a whole series of podcasts just about Reagan and his
so if
run
you watch
and
those,
all his
go
life.
watch if we do anything. You watch the films we've talked about, you know, because they are worth whatever you.
Yeah, I think
whatever you think of Chuck Norris films, but go watch.
True.
At least go watch Uncommon Valor. I think
Uncommon
Uncommon Valor is probably like the most competent as a full film. I love Rambo First Blood Part 2.
It's the least known, I think. I think it's the least known out of the bunch.
But also, go on YouTube and just Google Reagan speeches and just watch him when he was kind of young or in the early presidency. Like, you know, America was coming out of like the Depression of the 70s, and he had this, what was it called? Like, it was morning in America. This is a kind of like a period of hope, and we're going to build back up. And it was all about stuff like. It was no wonder. Like, he had people in the palm of his hand. Like, you know, it was just, he ran away with the election in 1980. Like, it was not a surprise. So,
crazy. Yeah, crazy times. But yeah, I think Rambo, of these films, is still my favorite.
Absolutely.
Like, I think it's a solid action film. It's paced really well. It's shot really well. I think Stallone's good in it. Again, doesn't have to do a lot, but I think his physique is, you know, it's that this is the kind of building block of like actors getting into just superhuman shape, and like Arnie as well, of course, and the look of that, and obviously like Stallone's a lot more sinewy and kind of like lean.
Just on that front, this is the first film he did after his Rocky III accident. If you look at the cover of some of the Rambo 2 DVDs, or even some of the posters, like there's him with the M16. And you'll see on his bicep, and there's like a tendon, like a really tight tendon. That's a metal cable he has that connects his, because he tore his pec away from his shoulder and stuff when he was having, I think it was with Carl Weathers. Like they were having basically like a weightlifting competition, and couldn't compete, and the muscle tore away from his arm. So. Fair play to him. But yeah, again, I actually say I'll finish on this point. Like in the book, I break areas into like periods, into sections.
Yeah,
and I said like 82 to like 92 is a period, is a decade of action, right? So 82 is like First Blood, Conan the Barbarian, 48 Hours. It's like your proto 80s action films. 85 is the peak, because you get Rambo 2, Commando, and you've had Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Yeah.
Which, you get into the peak of like those action kind of templates. And this is a peak of 80s action. This is when everyone thinks of like, it's the muscle bound action heroes. Commando and Rambo 2 are the peak. That's what you're talking about.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Commando's a classic. Again, another very brainless, but very fun. But again, there's some politics in there as well. There's kind of
war on
like
drugs
and
South African, not South African, South American politics.
South
and
American,
stuff.
I think that country. I think Jack told me that country ends up
Valverde.
in different films. I think they use that country. Yeah, Valverde.
It's,
I think they use it in a few other films, don't they?
It's the
Yeah, that was it. Valverde's. Yeah, I thought so. Yeah, I knew he told me that at some point. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. That's a nice little universe building idea. But yeah, I've really enjoyed this discussion. And yeah, I enjoyed watching these films and doing the research. And again, I have a better understanding of Reagan, his run, and Vietnam, and the things involved. Again, I can absolutely understand why people bought into the conspiracy theory and why they would want to, and why they would feel they need to, and again, those documentaries go to show the lengths that people will suspend their disbelief to hope and believe that these people are still alive or out there somewhere. And maybe, like you said, maybe there are some out there. I think I heard about certain groups and certain soldiers from certain groups like making their own little area in certain parts of Vietnam as well, and having the time of their lives, it sounds like. But yeah, like it's very, very fascinating subject, and I can't wait to read the book. And then when it comes out, I will link it to this podcast to make sure that people can purchase it.
It might be a while, but I'm still, unfortunately, I'm finding that writing this book is a bit like a spider's web. Every time I get to a point, I'm like, there's another thing to go to. They go off to something else.
It's all connected, yeah. I've just given you more films to watch as well, so that's probably not going to help. But we do have a couple of comments before we go, so I'm just going to read those out very, very quickly. So, Derek Esoteric, my boss at work, and the biggest fan of this podcast, I believe. But again, who knows? It's hard to tell. I've got such great fans. But yes, so he said, Uncommon Valor, Charts or Tim Thomason should brush up on his pulling technique. His just trying to keep warm line with live fun is rubbish. He should have tried something more subtle like, can we just cuddle in our underwear? But it was acceptable in the 80s. Talking of which, the closing credit character montage is the most 80s thing ever, which that's got to influence Predator, that closing.
I'd completely forgotten about that. It absolutely must do. Yeah.
It must have, because you've got them all dead and going off, and it's really tragic ending, and then all of a sudden they're like giving thumbs up, and the guy on acid is like doing his weird kind of butterfly dance thing. Yeah, hippie dance going on. Missing in action. Never seen a Chuck Norris film before. He makes Keanu Reeves look like Sir Laurence Olivier. Which, again, can't argue. Rambo, Agent Ko Fong Bao is simply asking for it when she says, "I want to go to America with you, Rambo." Have these actors learnt nothing? That said, couldn't she at least have been allowed to get the final scene? I was expecting something akin to Diana Rigg on Her Majesty's Secret Service, but no, she lasted about 2 minutes after the ill-advised statement. Also, I feel conned. Sylvester Stallone didn't say "don't push me" even once in this film. This is clearly the equivalent of Michael Caine's "not a lot of people know that" line. And another thing, why does Sly appear to be oiled up like a butterball chicken for much of the action? A general question relevant to all these films: why do Americans give a full-on basso profundo cry of "ugh" when they are fatally wounded, but the Vietnamese go "aye" at about 3 octaves higher? It's all just very confusing.
Yeah,
Derek.
It's just cultural norms, I think.
Cultural problems as well. Cultural offensiveness. And Andy, I posited the question to Andy earlier on the Discord, and he says, I wouldn't say it fueled the conspiracy, these films, but were themselves inflamed by it. Life imitates art, art imitates life, and the lack of any concrete evidence in the investigations is what fueled the conspiracy theories of active participation and cover-ups, which is not unlike what you've been saying.
I think that's fair. I think the conspiracy was there first, and there's a series of like books that came out in the late 70s that wanted it, but the films kind of, I think, gave it a wider appeal, and almost gave it a shine or a sheen that gave it acceptability that for 60-something percent people still be believing it in 1991 kind of tells you that something's fueling that belief.
Yeah, and I think the thing with the action films is obviously politics is very complicated. There's a lot of complexities and diplomacy and, like you said, and action films kind of come away and they go, here's what you need to know. They're bad, they're good.
It's like the Horrible Histories version of things, isn't it? But like with bazookas. That's...
They're the baddies, they're the goodies. We're going to fight them, and but which is what I kind of like about Rambo Part 2 is that it's not just the Vietnamese, it's not just the Russians, it's also again like the US of all of these countries and their own political ideas of fighting and costing people lives and stuff. So, which is why I'm not too harsh when it comes to the politics. I think in Rambo 2, even though they are there. But Rambo 3 can get in the bin.
It ends with even the famed titles, the card at the end, isn't it? That's sort of like, this is dedicated to the noble fighters,
the brave fighters of the Mujahideen. Is it the Timothy Dalton Bond? Does he team up with the Mujahideen in that as well? Yeah. Very, very again on the nose politically at the time. Very good. Rightio, Scott, before we go, where can people find you on your wonderful podcast or 2 wonderful podcasts, and what have you got coming up next?
Well, we've got a lot. So on the 2 podcasts, got 2. On 20th Century Geek, we've just been working through Superman. Obviously, you joined me for Quest for Peace, and so we will have just probably finished that by the time this comes out, and I'm moving on to another film series retrospective. Nothing heading into the cinemas, but I'm going to be doing the full Child's Play retrospective. I put it out there, but I'm going to do all the films, including the Mark Hamill remake and the television series. So we're going to do a full sort of Child's Play retrospective.
Wow. I've not seen as many as I would have liked.
So watch along.
I can
20th Century Geek watch along.
Maybe I can join you, or I can just follow it as I do. But that seems cool.
And our stories at Time and Space. Julian and I are still continuing our thing. We've sort of just been doing catching up with a lot of our Patreon stuff and putting that out there. And but we've just getting close to doing our Apocalypse series. Is coming out at the moment, and we are building up to. It's on Patreon at the moment, so it's on Patreon. So 20th Century Geek Patreon, if you want to go look at that. But we will be building up to our sort of next. We do a RoboCop retrospective, which will probably be out towards the end of November. But everything RoboCop. We do all the films, the TV shows, the cartoons. It gets. If you thought, Rambo obviously gets mentioned because it had a cartoon, which is Rambo and Justice Force. But why not? So yeah, they're the things. But yeah, just go and find us. I'm on Threads and Facebook and Instagram and all that kind of stuff as well, under 20th Century Geek. So come and find and have a chat.
Amazing. Absolutely, and I'll leave all the links, or as many links as I can, with everything we've talked about today. But yeah, thank you, and yes, I would just want to thank. You can find me at spiderdownthesecretballs.com. Don't forget to use the hashtag #PrepareForPrattle when you interact with us. And I'd like to thank my patrons on Patreon: Tony Farina, I Am Jack's Musings, Simon Cotton, Paul Meller, Mike Burton, Angry Andy, Tonya Todd, Math, Scott Hodgson, Ria Carrigan, and Sarah Coyne. Thank you for your continuing donations. It is very much appreciated and helps Prattle World keep on turning. And if you ever find yourself in a position to help the podcast, please consider it. If not, consider leaving a review, a comment, or sharing on social media. Thank you, guys. I know I've been away for a little while, having a little mental health retreat, much like Rambo needs and all the other Vietnam veterans we talked about today. I'm not going back into the... Well, I guess this is my Vietnam, I guess. No, I kid. I love this. This is one of the best things for me. Just wanted to have a little breather, that's all. But I'm back, and lots of stuff coming up, lots of things planned. Patreon's going to start ticking away again as well. But yeah, thank you, guys. As always, prepare for Prattle.